Rabotai, Erev Shabbat Shalom. Enjoy the cholent and the poppers and the beef jerky. Just try to keep the chewing to a low. Okay, Parshat Yitro. Thank you so much. Before we delve into the sugya, a few tidbits of information on this man Yitro. I'll give you two beautiful hidushim on the oranges of the name of the Yitro. First of all, the Haidah writes that according to the rabbis that tell us that Yitro came right before Matan Torah. He came right before the Jewish people received the Torah at Sinai. So therefore, starting off, how many mitzvot as a goy does Yitro have? 7. The Sheva mitzvot b'nei Noah, the 7 Noahide laws. So therefore, he started off with the number 7, and then when he eventually gets to Har Sinai and he gets the rest of the 613, so be'etzem, if he already had 7, so how many laws were added to him? That would be 613 minus 7, everybody. That would be 606. 606. So 606 in Hebrew, the way you would say that would be Tafresh Bav. Tafresh Rav is, in Gematria land, that would be 606. So therefore the Haidah writes that you want to know the reason why Yitro was added 606 mitzvot to him? Because of the Yud. What's the Yud? The Yud is the number 10, which is the 10 commandments. So therefore, if you look at his name is Yitro. Yitro, says the Haidah, the Yud is in reference to the 10 commandments, and the rest of the letters of his name, the Taf and the Resh and the Bav, is 606. In order to tell us, altogether, that's how many mitzvot was added to his name. So therefore, the Yud in Yitro was in the Zechut of the 10, which 10? The 10 commandments. Therefore, Tav Reish Vav is added to his name. That's the Hidush of the Haidah. That altogether, the reason why his name is Yitro is because altogether he had the 606 commandments added to his name. And B'zchut Ma, B'zchut of the Yud. That's the Hidush of the Haidah. Then he brings in the name of the Zohar. Zohar writes, if we could go straight into Gilgulim, he writes something unbelievable. He writes, in the name of the Zohar, there were 3 people, gentlemen. There were 3 people who had the Gilgul of Cain. Anybody know, for 5 points, who were the 3 Gilgulim of Cain? Nope. Moshe was heaven. Nope. Yitro. Yep, that's definitely one of them. Yitro is one of them. Then Korach was another. And the Mitzri. Who's the Mitzri? The Mitzri was the guy that Moshe Rabbeinu killed when he saw him beating the Jew. So therefore, these 3 people had what's called Shoresh Neshama of Cain. They had a piece of the Neshama of Cain. Says the Zohar that the Neshama has 3 parts. It has the good part, it has the middle part, and it has the bad part. It has the high, it has the medium, and it has the low. Like the game the kids play. Slap me high, slap me medium, slap me low. That's the Neshama. So he writes that the highest part of the Neshama of Cain, that was inside Yitro. The middle part of the Neshama of Cain, that was inside Korah. And the lowest part of the Neshama of Cain, that was inside the Mitzri. Or some say even it was inside Bil'am. Then he writes, that was the problem of Cain and Hevel. Why did Cain stand up and kill Hevel? See, it's not inside the Torah. The Torah doesn't tell us why the first murder took place. But he does say, based on the Midrash. Midrash writes, you tell me the answer to this question, gentlemen. Who were the people that God created? Who did they marry? Chaim, who did they marry? Cain and Hevel, who did they marry? Thank you, Ophir. He gave the correct answer. Their answer is the sisters. Every single time one of the first people to be created, when they were born with a twin. That's public knowledge. You can look that up. That's not no Hidushim over there. So he says that what happened was that Cain was born with a twin sister. So besides that, he's going to marry that twin. Hevel, on the other hand, Hevel was born with 2 sisters. Pasuk says, the rabbi called Rabbi Shimon HaAmsoni. He says every time in the Torah where it says the word et is l'rabot. What does it mean, et l'rabot? Et means coming to include. Every time it says the word et in the Torah, how would you explain in English the word et? Huh? And or the. So every time it says the words and or the in the Torah, it's coming to include something that's not written over there. Therefore he says that when it comes to the birth of Cain, it says, and Chava gave birth et Cain. She gave birth to Cain. So et in this situation is referring to the twin sister. However, with Hevel, what does it say? It says that Hevel was born, it says, et ahiv, et Hevel. The word et is said twice by Hevel. Therefore, the rabbis want to learn that not only was Hevel born with a twin sister, he was born with two twins. So says the Zohar HaKadosh, that what happened? So Cain marries his twin, Hevel marries his twin, but there's one more extra. Who's going to marry that extra twin? That was the machloket. That was the original fight between Cain and Hevel. Hevel claimed, listen, bottom line is, it's my sister, so therefore, I get to marry her. Cain's claim was, well, hold on a second, I'm the Bechor. And the Bechor always gets two. So therefore, Cain's claim was, I get her because I'm double, and Hevel's claim was, I get her because she's born with me. Therefore, it says the Torah, Cain got upset, he took the rock, and he bashed Hevel's head in until he died. And then he took the sister, and he married her. That's what Cain did. Hashem gets upset, and Hashem says, because you killed your brother Hevel, there's going to be balagan. They were from the same mother, all from Chaba. At least according to one interpretation, all from Chaba. There's other interpretations, but let's stick with that one. Everything was from Chaba. So what happens, if you look at source number 2, gentlemen, in the sheets. Source number 2, it says, Vayomer Cain el Hashem, Gadol Avoni Minso. Even after Cain killed Hevel, there was a certain amount of regret that Cain had for killing his brother, and he did a level of teshuvah. Says the Torah, Hein garashta oti, you threw me out, hayom, from today, me'al panei adama, from the face of the earth. Umipanecha esater, and from your face I'm going to hide. Vahiti nad venad, I'm going to be a no man. I'm going to be jumping around from city to city. Ba'aretz v'haya kom motze'ei yahargeni. It could be that anybody that finds me could kill me. Vayomer lo Hashem, God tells Cain, Lechen kol horei Cain shiv'atayim yukam. That basically means that God gave Cain a life expectancy of 7 generations. Vayasim Hashem leCain ot. And God put onto Cain an ot. What's an ot? An ot is a sign. Libilati hakot oto kol mutza. That anybody that finds him is able to kill him. Says Rashi, what does it mean he gave him a sign? Rashi says in source number 3, Chakak lo ot mishmo b'mitzcho. God, he chiseled onto Cain, on his forehead, a certain letter from his name. Even though Rashi doesn't tell us what letter that was, but the Mepharshim say God chiseled in the letter Vav from his name. So Cain is walking around with a Vav on his forehead, and that forehead was a sign for people that no one is allowed to put their hands on Cain, at least for 7 generations. Therefore, the rabbis tell us that fast forward many years later, Mitgalgel, the reincarnation of Cain, was the father of Moshe Rabbeinu, who was Yitro, his father-in-law. Then he says, in order to make a tikkun, in order to make a fixing on Cain, again, what was the sin? The sin was that he took away the twin sister. So we have to find it where if Yitro is the Gilgul of Cain, and Cain took a woman away from Hevel, and by the way, as a side point, Moshe Rabbeinu is Hevel. That's why Moshe Rabbeinu, the Rosh Tevot of his name, Moshe is, the Mem is Moshe. The Shin is what? The Shin is, anybody know? The Shin is Shet, who is the son of Adam Rishon, and the Hey is Hevel. Therefore, Moshe Rabbeinu is these 3 Gilgulim, Moshe, Shet, and Hevel. So Moshe Rabbeinu is Hevel. So now, fast forward many years, you have Cain, who is Yitro, who is the father-in-law of Moshe, and then you have Moshe, who is really Hevel. So it turns out, fast forward many years, brothers are now becoming father-in-law and son-in-law. Close enough, Jeff? Father-in-law and son-in-law. Now, since we find it, listen very closely, says the Zohar Kadosh. Since we find it that Cain took away a woman from Hevel, the tikkun to be would to give a woman to Hevel. Hazaku Baruch. So therefore, in order to fix the sin of Cain had to give somebody over to Hevel. That's why Moshe marries the daughter of Yitro, because since Yitro is Cain has to give a woman over to Hevel, and that woman was Tzipporah. Therefore, says the Zohar, it's no coincidence that the Shoresh Neshama of Tzipporah, his wife, was actually that twin sister that Cain took away. So therefore, now everything is fixed. Yitro officially made a tikkun on Cain. Said the Zohar Kadosh, I'll prove it to you that this was the tikkun. Because again, go back. What was the letter that God chiseled onto the forehead of Cain? It was a Vav. Now, Rashi tells us, and we're going to see it in a second, that Yitro had many names. But the main name that he lived by wasn't Yitro. It was Yeter. Look at Rashi in the fourth source. Rashi says, Sheva Shemot Nikra'u Lo. Yitro had 7 names. And it was Ma. What was it? Ru'uel, Yeter, Yitro, Chovav, Hever, Keni, and Pituel. But the main name that he went by was Yeter. But says the Ruach Kadosh, once Yitro made the official tikkun on Cain, and we learned that which letter was chakuk on his forehead, on his mitzcho, it was the Vav. So therefore, once Yitro makes the tikkun on Cain, God takes that Vav that was on his forehead and he moves it from Cain to who? To Yeter, making Yeter into Yitro. Therefore it says, the Ruach HaKadosh, that is the proof that Yitro made the ultimate tikkun on Cain. Therefore he says, that is a small tidbit of information. Yitro, his name is, it has dual connotation. The first one is with Hida. Hida, right? So you want to know why his name was Yitro? It's because since Yitro added another 606 mitzvot to his repertoire, because he started with 7 mitzvot b'nei Noach, then he added another 606. 606 b'gematria is Tet or Taf, Resh, Vav. And the zechut of the Yud is the 10 Commandments, and the zechut of the Yud of the 10 Commandments, it was added another 606, altogether the name Yitro. And finally the Hidush of the Zohar HaKadosh, he made the final tikkun on Cain, and the letter Vav was added to his name, Yeter became Yitro. Okay, that's just a small introduction, gentlemen. What I really came to say is the Hidush of the Hadam Sofer. Listen closely. Pasuk says in the very first source, Vayishma Yitro Kohen Midyan Hoten Moshe. Yitro heard something. Of course, this is the story how Yitro heard about all the miracles that God performed on behalf of the Jews. And then he came and he wanted to convert to Judaism. That's basically the story. That is the opening up of our parasha. So he heard something. Vayishma Yitro. It doesn't tell us what he heard, but he heard something. The father of Moshe. Et kol asher asa Elohim le Moshe. That everything that Elohim did to Moshe, Uli Yisrael, to the Jews, ki hotzi amunai et Yisrael mitzrayim. That God took out the Jews from Egypt. Now I know that people don't like when I get very technical. But every time I look at a pasuk and I see 2 different names of God, it gets me curious. So right away you have to ask yourself, what is going on? Why does it say in the same pasuk it uses God's name of Elohim, and then it employs God's name of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei? You always have to ask that question. Every single time you see in the Torah God's name mentioned, you have to ask, why is this specific name of God over here? And it uses both God's names. Number 1, it says Yitro heard everything that Elohim did and everything that Yud-Kei Vav-Kei did. And the question is why? Why does it implore those 2 names? And comes Rashi. Rashi says, what did Yitro hear? Anybody know? Anybody know Rashi over here? What did Yitro hear? What miracles did Yitro hear about? The fact that he decided to come. Not only Amalek, but says Rashi, look, don't take my word for it. Look at source number 5. Says Rashi, Vayishma Yitro, Ma Shmu'a Shama Buba. What did he hear that he came? Says Rashi, Kriyat Yamsuf u'Milchemet Amalek. He heard about 2 things. He heard about the war against Amalek, which happened in last week's parasha, and then he heard about Kriyat Yamsuf. And my question is very simple. Why did Rashi choose these 2 miracles? Again, obviously they didn't have any forms of communication back in the day. But I'm assuming if Yitro heard about Kriyat Yamsuf and he heard about Milchemet Amalek, he also heard about everything else. He heard about all the plagues and all the miracles, all the 10 makot. So what tipped off Rashi to tell me, what did Yitro hear? He heard about Milchemet Amalek and Kriyat Yamsuf. Those are my 2 questions. What is Pishat behind Rashi's Hidush of Milchemet Amalek and Yamsuf? And why does the pasuk employ 2 different names of God? Yud-Kei Vav-Kei and Elohim. Are we good so far, gentlemen? Is everything clear up until this point? Good? Gentlemen, there's a principle of the Ramban, Nachmanides. And the principle goes as follows. We said this many times. You finish it for me. Maseh Avot, Siman Labanim. What does that mean? What does that mean? That means that anything that you see in Sifarim of Shemot, Vayikra, Bamidbar, or Devarim, and any episode that's found inside the Torah has its roots where? Where? In Sefer Bereshit. You have to find, every single time you could trace anything that happened in the other 4 books of Moses, you could trace it back to the book number 1. it had to happen to the Avot first in order for it to happen to the Jewish people. The Avot were the small story, and the Jews were the big story, but its roots find itself always in the forefathers. So therefore, based on that principle, I have to ask myself, where do we find it that these two miracles of Kiryat Yamsuf and Milchemet Amalek happened inside the Torah to the forefathers before they happened to the Jewish people? Where do we find an episode where Jews collectively, all the Jews, crossed over a body of water and immediately afterwards they fight Amalek? Again, it's got to be Ma'aseh Botim Labanim. It has to be a situation where if it happened in Shemot, if it happened in Vayikra, Bamidbar, if it happened there, it had to happen to the fathers. And the question is, where did it happen? So last week I told you what happened. Last week I told you the story of Avraham Avinu. And when Abraham was going on the way to Agadat Yitzhak, what happened? The Satan made a river. And the river was there, and what happened? God made the river disappear. But that wasn't a story that happened to all the Jews. That happened to Abraham and Yitzhak. So maybe I argue maybe that did happen to all the Jews. But right after that, you don't see where they fought Amalek. And the question is, that must not be the story. Where did it happen to the Avot, where the Jewish people collectively crossed a body of water, and then they fought Amalek? Anybody can guess? Don't guess. Look at source number 6, Rabotai. Look at source number 6. Vayakom balayla hu, and they got up on that night. Vayikach et shtei nashav, v'et shtei shivchotav, v'et achad asa yeladav, vayavor ma'avar yabok. It says that Yaakov grabbed, who did he grab? He grabbed his wives, he grabbed his maidservants, he grabbed all 11 of his children. Benjamin was not yet born yet, and he crossed Ma'avar Yabok. So far, we have it all good. The entire Jews that existed at that time was Yaakov Avinu, his wives and his family, and you see them crossing a body of water. And then immediately after they cross the body of water, who does Yaakov Avinu meet? He meets the Sashel Esav, and then Esav himself, which, in essence, Esav is the father of Eliphaz, who's also the father of Amalek. So therefore, there you go. I found it. I found the Maseh Abot Siman Labanim, where the Jewish people in last week's parasha crossed Yam Suf and immediately were confronted by Amalek, and the roots of that story really happened to Yaakov and Esav. Look at source number 7, and it writes, Vayisa et einav. This is now Esav. Esav lifts up his eyes. Vayan et hanashim. He sees the woman. Ve'et yeladim, and he sees the children. Vayomer, and he says, Mi ele. Key words of the entire class. Mi ele. As the topic shows, who are these? Vayomar, and Yaakov answers him, Hayeladim asher hanan elokim et avadecha. These are the children that God has given me. Now, Rabotai, I don't understand the question. Mi ele. Who are these children? You don't have to be Albert Einstein to understand, to see that if a guy is coming towards you and he's got a woman with him and he's got children with him, you don't have to be Chacham Ovadia to guess. Most probably, these women are this man's wives and these children are this man's children. What kind of question is the question? Mi ele. Who are these to you? Esav, I know you're not that stupid, so why are you asking the question of Mi ele? Are we clear so far? This whole thing is going to be with steps. You got to get every single step before the hidush. Good? Okay, good. Mori, you're following so far? Okay, good. I need to tell you another principle of the Ramban. Ramban is the star of the show tonight. Says the Ramban. The Ramban is talking on miracles. The very end of last week's parasha, on the last pasuk of Bishalach, the Ramban gives a klal, a general rule, a very deep philosophical rule, and a lesson in Emunah. The Ramban is talking about miracles. And he says, what is the purpose of a miracle? When a person witnesses a flat-outness, what is supposed to be his mindset at that point? Chaim, come, you're missing. That's definitely true. But everything we're supposed to say is all from Hashem. The Ramban is discussing miracles. And what should be the person's attitude when witnessing one? I read the first opening words of the Ramban in source number 8. It says the Ramban, Umin hanisim hagidolim v'hamifursamim Adam modeh benisim hanistarim shem yisod haTorah kula. Says the Ramban, An open miracle, gentlemen. An open miracle is where there's no doubt that a miracle happened. Can I give you an example? Everybody, any been to a Broadway show before?
Yes.
When I was much younger, maybe I was 10, 11 years old, my parents took me to see Saturday Night Fever. Don't ask. They just took me to see it many, many years ago. It was my first time ever, and probably my last time at a Broadway show. When I was there, I was amazed to find that every single time the actors, they come on the show, a giant curtain is lifted up, they do their act, and then the curtain falls back down. And behind the curtain, they're preparing for the next act. Lahavdil. An open miracle is when God lifts up the curtain and you could see all the actors. And you could see all what happens backstage and behind the scenes. An open miracle is when God opens up the curtains and everything is visible. Everything is out in the open. Sometimes in Jewish history, God opens up the curtains and you see God. There is no way to doubt what you're witnessing at this point. As an example, Kiryat Yamsuf is a great example of how God said, I am lifting up the curtain, and therefore there is nothing that you could possibly doubt that God exists in the world. Everybody, even the biggest atheist on the planet, at Kiryat Yamsuf, witnessed God. And he had no choice but to point and say, Ze Eli Va'anvehu. It's impossible to doubt. God is right there. Kiryat Yamsuf was a time where God just lifted up the curtain and showed everybody all his cards. But, and this is a big but, Mordechai, that is not the goal. Kiryat Yamsuf and lifting up the curtain is not the goal, says the Ramban. You know what the goal is? The goal is that from Kiryat Yamsuf, from when God opens up the curtain and shows all his cards, it is incumbent and my responsibility to believe in God just like I believed in him when it was open, to believe in him or to believe in him when the curtain is down. The words of the Ramban are, the purpose of open miracles is just like you believe in Hashem when the miracles is open and obvious, is to believe in Hashem when the miracle is not so obvious. I'll read you his words again. Source number 8. Min hanisim hagedolim hamifusamim, the big open miracles when the curtains are up. Adam modeh benisim hanistarim. A person also has to understand the hidden miracles. Shehem yesod haTorah kula. This is the purpose. The purpose of opening up the curtain is to know that God is there even when it is closed. Even when you have the nisim nistarim, when the curtain is down and it's not so obvious that God is there, God's one-time event reveals that it is considered an all-time event. Closed curtain in our terms, gentlemen, how would you say closed curtain in our vernacular? Hazaku Baruch. It would be nature. People think that nature is exactly what it is. The non-Jews came up with a word called nature. What is nature? Nature is, this is what is supposed to happen. I'm supposed to wake up and everything is supposed to be in order. Teva. And everything has a system. There is a ecosystem, there is a solar system, and we just expect to wake up in the morning and have everything work. But says the Ramban, that is not true. That is not true. Teva is just as much as a miracle and a nes as Kiryat Yamsuf is. But we don't see it. So Hazak. So the point of Kiryat Yamsuf, when God lifts up the curtain and we see what's going on, is to realize that everything that is Teva is a miracle just like Kiryat Yamsuf is. So again, it's natural, but it's really miraculous. Therefore, the words of the Ramban is, from the open miracles, we see the hidden ones. And the hidden ones is Teva. The hidden ones is nature. However, and this is a big however, Amalek is the exact opposite. Amalek is the guy that wants you to believe that everything is happenstance. That everything just occurs. And God is not really around. What we call in Hebrew, Hashgacha Pratit, how would you say that in English? Divine providence. How would you say it for me to understand it? That would be called individualized attention, right? That God gives everybody individualized attention. Amalek believes, they agree to us, that God is here. God did make miracles. But after the miracles that God made or did to you in Egypt, where did he go? He just disappeared. He went back upstairs. He was doing godly stuff, but he's not coming back down. And if he does, it's only for something major, and then he'll say goodbye. I'll see you in another 1,000 years. That is Amalek's hashkafa. That is his ideology. And therefore it says the Ramban, and I continue reading, She'ein la'adam chelek betorat Moshe, a guy doesn't have a portion in the chelek of Moshe Rabbeinu, ad shena'amin bechol devareinu u'mikraeinu shekulam nisim. A person has to believe that everything that happens to him, gentlemen, everything that happens to him, his wife and his kids and his car and his job and his house and the neighborhood that he lives in and his friends that he has, everything is considered shekulam nisim. Everything is orchestrated by God. She'ein bahem teva u'minhago shel olam. Nothing is considered what we call minhago shel olam. Everything is just the way the world is supposed to work. God is micromanaging everything. And everything that happens to us, there are no less miracles than Kiryat Yamsuf. But like I said, Amalek is the exact opposite. He agrees that God made Nisim. But after he made those Nisim, he left. And Amalek doesn't want us to believe in Hashgacha. Nature isn't God. It's just random. And that's why, which a very well-known gematria, Amalek is the same gematria as, anybody know? The biggest one is Hazaku Baruch Safek. Safek means there's a doubt. The doubt that, also true. Amalek is also Dolar. That's another famous one that they say. But the main one, which is more Achronim, Dolar is more recent. That's a more recent thing. Dolar, that's a dollar. Dolar, yeah, dollar. But he writes that the biggest and the biggest and most well-known gematria of Amalek is Safek. Amalek and Safek is the same thing. Amalek is 240. Safek is also 240. In order to tell us this secret, that anytime you see Amalek, you know that what he's trying to do. He's trying to get you to doubt that God is always here. That's why every single time a contradiction comes up in your mind, a contradiction or something that questions your belief in God, and that could span from a very long list of things that happen to humans that get us to doubt that maybe God is really not here. Holocaust is a great one. October 7th is another one. That we find these contradictions and we find these questions of, well, where was God at that time? Those people who ask that question, the source of the question stems from Amalek. Because the whole goal of Amalek is to put inside of you a safek for you not to believe that God is orchestrating every single thing in your life. Let me tell you a hadush from the Gaon Vilna. Gaon Vilna writes, there's no such thing as a synonym. Chaim, what's a synonym?
Words that have the same meaning.
In Torah, there's no such thing. Every single word has a specific meaning, even though in English it might sound the same. Can I give you an example of this? What is the translation of Gadol? Big. What is the translation of Ram? High, lofty. But since the Gaon Vilna, it means two different things. Because Gadol, to say somebody is Gadol, somebody is big, somebody is tall, I would say that guy is Gadol, he's tall. That means that he has his roots in the ground. A good example of that would be a tree. A tree is Gadol. Why? Because its roots are in the ground, but it's very high. Ram means that it's high, but its roots are not in the ground. An example of that would be bamboo. No, the bamboo, the roots are in the ground. A cloud would be a good idea. A cloud, it's high, but it doesn't have the roots inside the ground. The Goyim, or Amalek specifically, it wants us to look at God that he's Ram. Ram means that he's high, but his roots are not in the ground. How do I know? Because King David tells us in Tehillim. I'll read you inside and he writes. It says, Ram al kol goyim, Adonai Shemaim kivodo. What does that mean? That God is Ram. To who? To the Goyim. Which Goyim? To Amalek. Where is God? Shemaim kivodo. He's only found where? In the heavens. But he's not found in Olam Hazeh. You'll never find God, according to Amalek, involved in the daily grind. In the daily life that we have every single second, you're not going to find that God there. Why? Because God is Ram. He's there, but he's all the way up there and his roots are not in the ground. However, there's another pasuk in Tehillim that says that no, we don't say that. We say that Yud Kei Vav Kei Amunai B'Tzion Gadol. That God is B'Tzion, but he is Gadol. Gadol means his roots are here. He's rooted in Olam Hazeh because he's involved in every single second. Side point, but no coincidence. What is the gematria of Ram? Resh is 200. Mem is 40. So 240. What's 240? Hazaku Baruch. The Amalek wants us to believe that God is Ram. He's here, but he's way up there. And therefore, in the past history, God has revealed that curtain to Am Yisrael. But after he revealed it, he just went above his business, and he's never coming down again. And when the curtain is down, that's not a down curtain. That's just teva. That's just regular nature. Now watch. This Hatam Sofer says. Get this cloud good. What is the difference between Elokim and Yud Kei Vav Kei? Don't tell me Hesed and Gevurah. I'm not going that route today. Yud Kei Vav Kei and Elokim, says the Hatam Sofer, that is the two different ways God performs miracles on our behalf. Get this cloud good, gentlemen. Pay attention to this fact because this is the whole class. Yud Kei Vav Kei Elokim, says Hatam Sofer. Yud Kei Vav Kei, anytime you see God's name of Havaya, Amunai, that's God's way of revealing open miracles. Kiryat Yamsuf is Yud Kei Vav Kei. Elokim, says Hatam Sofer, is where God is making miracles, but the veil is down. That's the hidden miracles. That's what me and you would call Teva. As an example, the Mehamet Amalek, was it miraculous? Not really. There was no coals falling from the sky. Nobody was flying. There was no blood. There was blood, but not the blood of the Makot. There was no Tzifardea. There was no Makot there. Mehamet Amalek was very, very Teva'i. It was very, very natural. Therefore, God's name of Elokim, it manifests itself in a way where the miracles are hidden. Yud Kei Vav Kei is when the miracle is open. So far, so good? Yeah? No coincidence? What's the gematria of Elokim? You guys should know that, 86. Hazaku Baruch. What's the gematria of Teva or HaTeva? Also 86. Because God and Elokim and HaTeva, they match because God, that's God's name. That's God's way of manifesting his way in a very natural type of situation. Good so far? Yeah? Let me tell you another difference between two letters or two words. Pay attention. This is all Hatam Sofer. Hatam Sofer writes, two words in Hebrew, a much deeper explanation of what's Peshat between Yud Kei Vav Kei and Elokim. And he says, I have two words in Hebrew. The two words are me, Mem Yud, and Eile. Gentlemen, take your seats. Me and Eile. Yeah, Rabotai. Don't focus on the people who just came in. Focus on right here. Me and Eile. What is me? Me is who? What does who mean? Who means, the connotation of the word me is a lack of knowledge. I don't know. I have a doubt. Someone knocks on my door. I have no idea who it is. What do I say? Misham. Misham. Who's there? Because I don't know. The word me, the connotation is something that I don't know. I have a doubt on who's there. Therefore, I say the words me. I don't know. What does the word Eile mean? Eile means these. These means it's in front of me. Mi Eile. Who's there? Misham. It opens the door. Oh, it's Eile. It's you. I didn't know it was you. Eile means that there's a certain amount of certainty. There's clarity. Eile means it's in front of me. So therefore, there's two schools. There's the school of me, who is doubtful, who has no idea, who's safek. And then the school of Eile. Eile means I'm sure of it. Who is part of the school of me in our history? Close? The first time Moses approaches Paro, and he says, Yud Kei Vav Kei sent me to you. What does Paro answer? Mi Hashem asher yishma bekolo. Who is God that I'm going to listen to him? Therefore, Paro, he subscribes to the school of thought of me. Me is, I'm doubtful. I have no idea who God is. Therefore, Paro is me. Therefore, pay attention. In Parashat Bo, when God says Moshe Rabbeinu back to him, it says, Bo el paro, ki ani hichbadeti et libo, et lebadav, lema'an shiti ototai ele bikirbo. What's ele again? Ele means certainty. Ele is clarity. Ele means that I need to teach Paro a lesson. Therefore, the Paro who came along and said, Mi Hashem Yishma b'kolo, who is God that I have to listen to him? Says Hashem, Moshe Rabbeinu, go teach him a lesson. Go teach him who I am, and from his me, from his doubt, from his lack of knowledge, we'll give him Ele. We'll give him clarity, and we'll make sure that he knows who God is. Therefore, Ele, leman sheti ototai, Ele bikirbo. Make sure he knows that Ele is here. Therefore, says Hatam Sofer, if I have these two words in front of me, if I have me and I have Ele, and I put them together, really backwards, Hazaku Baruch, it spells the word Elokim. Picture it in your minds. Boggle the letters a little bit. Mi Ele, it spells Elokim. And says the Hatam Sofer, that is one of the goals in life, is to put these two words together and realize that it is Elokim. Look at source number 9. Prophet Yeshaya is talking. Says Yeshaya, Se'u marom enechem, pick up your eyes and look above. Ure'u, and see, mi bara ele. Who created this? Look up in the sky. And if you're doubtful that God created this, mi bara ele. Who created all of this? Therefore says the Rabbi. Now everything makes sense. Back in source number 7. Who's the king of mi ele? Yaakov approaches Esav. And Esav looks at him and he asks him a very funny question. What does he say? Who are these? What did I tell you? Well, you don't have to be Albert Einstein to understand who are these. You see women, you see children. It's from Yaakov. He was asking him a much deeper question, says Hatam Sofer. Go back to the source. Vayisa et einav vayad et hanashim v'et yeladim vayomer mi elelach. Who are these children? What is Esav trying to do? He's trying to impart a hashkafa over to Yaakov. And he's saying, Yaakov, we have to be part of the school of me. Me means there's doubt. You think this is God? This is not God. God is not here anymore. And how does Yaakov answer him, gentlemen? Don't look at me like I fell off the face of the planet. Look inside the pasuk. It says, Vayomar. Yaakov answers Esav, Hayiladim, Asher Hanan, Elokim et Abadecha. It's the children that the God called Elokim gave me. Now what do we say Elokim was? Elokim is God's manifestation of the hidden miracles. That even though it might look like it's hidden, even though it might look like happenstance, a guy gets married and naturally he has children. Says Yaakov Avinu, nothing is happenstance and nothing is random. If Esav wants me to be part of the mi ele, he wants to separate the two. He wants there to be a me. He wants there to be an ele. Says Yaakov Avinu, I put those two together. I put those two together and I make it Elokim in order to show that just like there are open miracles of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, there's also the hidden miracles of Elokim. Now this makes sense because the first question I asked was what tipped off Rashi to tell me that the two miracles that Yitro heard was what? Amalek and Kriyat Yamsuf. Why would he specifically choose those two miracles? It was very simple. Because in the Torah, in the very first opening up verse in our parasha, it says, all the miracles, Vayishma Yitro, Kohen Midian, et kol asha asa Elokim, ki hotzi Emunah et Yisrael. Therefore says Rashi, I know the Hatam Sofer's klal. I know his rule. I know that Elokim is God's manifestation of hidden miracles. And I know Yud-Kei Vav-Kei is God's manifestation of his open miracles. Therefore, it must be the fact that the pasuk, that the verse is employing these two names, Dafka, Elokim, and Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. It must be teaching me a lesson that there is the hidden in order for me to there's the revealed in order for me to realize the hidden. And therefore, what is the revealed? It must be Kiryat Yamsuf. And then what is the hidden? What I might not think is a miracle, what I might attribute to Teva, to just nature, it's Elokim. It's the war of Milhamet Amalek. Because even though they didn't seem so miraculous, bottom line is that from the open miracles, I realized the closed ones. Therefore, says Khatam Sofer. Again, go back to the klal of the Ramban. Ma'asav otzim al banim. What was the hint? What was the first story that took place of crossing over the sea and then fighting with Amalek? That was Yaakov. Yabok. So it must be that the Torah by us, it must be that it hints it to us somewhere. Somewhere it's got to be hinted to the story of Yaakov and Esav. Again, if Yaakov and Esav is the root, and our story is the translation of what happened, do we find it anywhere in our parasha where it hints and tells us, by the way, if you want the root of this story, you have to go and look where? Go look by Esav. Does it say it anywhere? It says Khatam Sofer, beautiful. The very first word of our parasha, what is it? Vayishma. Vayishma. Yeah? Vayishma. There's a mem in the Yitro over there, if you realize. Look it inside. You have to see it inside in order to appreciate what I'm about to tell you. There is a me over there. There's a mem and a yud. Again, what's me? Me is doubt. Me is lack of knowledge. If I were to take out the mem in the yud, what letters do I have left? No. Vayishma, Chaim. Take out the mem in the yud, I have Esav left. In order to tell me that the very first word in our parasha, guys, you might not fall off your chairs. But when I saw this Hidush, if the whole thing is based on mi ele, who are these? And me is supposed to give us doubt, just like Amalek wants us to do, to put a safek in our minds in order to get us not to believe that God is running the world on a daily, second basis, and that is Esav. So therefore, Vayishma Yitro. Vayishma has the me inside. And take away the me, you get Esav. There's no better proof to tell me, by the way, you want the origin story of Kiryat Yamsuf and Melhamet Amalek, all you have to do is go by the Ishma. Go to the me, go to the Esav. Because once you see the Esav, then you're going to know exactly where the origin story is. Therefore, it says Hatam Sofer, and I have the book right here to prove it. He says an unbelievable Hidush. This is the book, it's called Hatam Sofer al Torah. He says so beautiful. He says, by Pesach time, the Mizmor that we say, there's a special Mizmor of Tehillim that we read right before the Kaddish of Arvit. The very end of that sentence, the last sentence of the Mizmor, Hazan usually sings it. He says, Mi chacham yishmor eile v'yitbonenu chazdei Adonai. Pay attention, gentlemen. Mi chacham, again, mi chacham yishmor eile. So you see the two words again. Mi chacham yishmor eile. According to what we just said. Yeah, according to what we just said. Who was the chacham in our story that heard about something that combined the me and the ele and made it Elokim in order to realize the hidden miracles based on the open miracles? It was Yitro. Says Hatam Sofer, unbelievable, and I read you his words inside because it's fascinating. It's fascinating. Again, in order to appreciate this, the source number 9, source number 10, the very last source on the page is Tehillim. Mi chacham yishmor ele. Says Hatam Sofer, look at the words mi chacham. Says Hatam Sofer, unbelievable. He says, Ketiv, mi chacham ele. Mi chacham yishmor eile v'yitborenu chazdei Adonai v'lo perish mi hu chacham. It doesn't say, King David doesn't tell us who this chacham is. Hamitbonen bazeh she'hashgacha nifla'a shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that believes that every single moment God is running our lives. Ulahakir givuratav, in order to understand His givurah. Mi hu zeh, who is this man? Says Hatam Sofer, Yitro hayazeh. This was Yitro. Shema kriyat Yamsuf from Milhamet Amalek. Uba, and he came. Ve'amar yadati ki gadol Hashem mikol Elohim. There you go. He says it. I understand that Hashem, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, is the greatest amongst Elohim. What is he trying to say? That I understand from the Yud-Kei Vav-Kei miracles. I understand from the open and the open veil, and when the curtain is up, I understand from that Yud-Kei Vav-Kei that Elohim is stemming from that. I understand from the open miracles, the hidden miracles is the root. And therefore he continues, V'hayenu deramaz. That's what David HaMelech is trying to hint. David HaMelech alav shalom beruach kodsho mi chacham. Again, look at the words. I put it on the sheet so you can appreciate it. Look at the very last source. Mi chacham, says Hatam Sofer. Mi chacham is Rosh Tevot, Yitro, Kohen Midyan Choten Moshe. Mi Chacham is an acronym for, again, Yitro, Kohen Midyan Choten Moshe. Yitro, the priest of Midyan, the father-in-law of Moshe. In order to tell me this unbelievable Pishat, Rabotai, again, when I saw this Khatam Sofer, I had to jump up and down and dance because it's so gorgeous when he's saying, what a beautiful remez, what a beautiful way to explain to me that Yitro was the only one who realized Ki Gadol Amunai Mikol Elohim, that Gadol Amunai, the manifestation of Yud Kei Vav Kei, that the open miracles gives us a sense of feeling of the Elokim, of the hidden miracles, but we're supposed to realize it just the same. That whatever we have going on in our lives, even the simpleness, even the fact that I get to walk, even the fact that I get to blink, everything is Hashgacha of Hashem. And the more a person believes in that, that's why, by the way, we said in the high holidays, what do we say? Hashem hu Elokim. Why are we saying that? Hashem hu Elokim. According to this interpretation, everything makes sense. Hashem hu Elokim. The reason why we say that is because we're trying to say that Hashem, the open miracles, Hu Elokim, is also the hidden miracles as well. And therefore it's incumbent, it's our responsibility that the more we realize this, the more we realize that even the small, even the daily grind, even the daily occurrence, even though the things that we experience on a daily basis, it's a miracle just the same. I'll tell you one quick story and then we'll finish. One time, Rabbi Duvi Ben Susan was in Israel. He was visiting. The story goes that he was visiting over there, and there was a second night by the hotel. And they're jet lag, him and his wife. And his wife looks at him at 2:30 in the morning. She says, I'm thirsty. I want a soda. He says, what soda would you like? And she says, I want a Coke Zero. Now in Israel, it's very, very hard to find a Coke Zero. So he opens up the fridge inside his hotel, the ones that cost $5 per can. He's looking for a Coke Zero. They had every single soda imaginable, but not Coke Zero. He says, you know what? I love my wife. Shalom Bayit lesson. I'm going to go find her a Coke Zero. He goes outside walking on Ben Yehuda Street looking for a store that's maybe open. He sees a big sign that says 24/6. 24/6, that they're open, just not on Shabbat. He's about to walk inside the store, and Bemet, he sees from the outside, he sees a whole refrigerator has Coke Zeros. And as he's about to approach, 3 teenagers, his old students, are running towards him. They seem drunk, and they're screaming, Rabbi, Rabbi. He thought he's about to get smashed. Rabbi, Rabbi, we have a question. Okay, what's your question? He says, could you prove to me that Yahadut, that religion, that Judaism is true, is emet? And he tells them, he goes, I'll give you 2 solid proofs. What's the solid proofs, he says? I'll read the story inside. He says as follows. Do you love your father? The rabbi asked. He replied that he certainly did. Now, if someone embarrassed your father, would you go and defend him? Of course, the boy replied, I would do whatever it takes to protect my father. So if your father told you something, you would believe it, wouldn't you? Of course I would. You might not know this, but the greatest proof that our Torah is true is that Hashem gave the Torah in front of our entire nation. This week's parasha. He gave it in front of how many people? Men over the age of 20. Altogether? No, 3 million people. Every other religion bases its beliefs on the testimony of one guy. One guy came to me. God came to me in a dream. God came to me in a dream. If someone today would tell you the words, God came to me in a dream, we would completely throw this guy out. But the fact that one guy, many years ago, or 2 guys, said the words, God came to me in a dream, we're believing those guys. But yet, when God revealed himself on Mount Sinai, in this week's parasha, and said the words in front of 3 million people, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I'm the God that took you out of Egypt. Who would witness that? 3 million people witnessed that. Rabbi Kelman used to say that it is impossible for 3 million people to make up the same story and pass that same made-up story to generation after generation after generation. After a certain point, when you have that many people involved in a lie, gentlemen, listen to what I'm telling you. So many people cannot be involved in the same lie that has the same details, that has the same, everything, every aspect of the lie is the same for 3 million people, and they pass on that story for generations, for thousands of years, it's impossible. There are no odds against that. Therefore, it must be that when God revealed himself to so many people and said the words, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, we have so many witnesses, you're guaranteed that that's true. It says the story. We're the only religion in the world that is based on the revelation to our entire nation. Hashem revealed himself on Har Sinai for everybody to see. Our forefathers saw this revelation and passed it down to the experience that they had with their children. Our Masorah was passed down from father to son, from mother to daughter with an unbroken chain. And you know that Torah is emet. When he finished speaking, the boy asked in a tone of awe, how come nobody ever told me this before? And how come I was never taught this in so many years? I don't know, said the rabbi. But now you know the truth. The boy's emotions flowed so powerfully that he began to cry. Then, regaining his focus, he reminded the rabbi that he still wanted to hear the second proof. Rabbi Ben Susan said, I have 2 proofs. What, the first proof wasn't good enough, he replied? Okay, I'll give you the second proof. It's called the Coke Zero phenomenon. It doesn't make any sense, says Rabbi Ben Susan, that I would fly 6,000 miles in order to wake up at 2:30 in the morning, that my wife is craving a Coke Zero. And then I would come out walking in the middle of Ben Yehuda Street, again at 2:30 in the morning, and I see a store that says 24/6 on it. And it happens to be that at exact time, a group of boys approach me, and they ask me about Coke Zero. Yeah. He says, the fact that Hashem brought me so far to bump into you right here, right now, is the biggest proof that Hashem is real. Because the chances of that happening are maybe like winning the lottery. Rabbi, you're right, the boy declared. Thank you. You don't know what you've done for us. The 3 walked away enveloped in the kind of happiness experienced only by those who know that Hashem is walking with them. Therefore, I think the lesson of Mi Ele, who are these? Don't forget the klal, the general rule of Hatam Sofer. The Yud Kei Vav Kei, God's name of we call Hesed, is really God's manifestation of his open miracles. And just like at that Broadway show, when I open up the veil and I see everybody here, I know what's going on backstage. That's God's way of telling us everything's here, everything's out in the open. That was Kriyat Yamsuf, where even the atheist had to say, Zekei Levian Vehu. But Elohim is a different story. Elohim is where God says, I'm manifesting. There are miracles here, but the miracle is hidden. And it's our responsibility to come along and say, just like I know the Yud Kei Vav Kei, just like I know the miracles that are wide and that are open and the veil is up and the curtains are up. Like the Ramban said, it's from the tremendous big miracles that I can realize even the small miracles, even the daily grind, what we call Teva, what we call Elohim, no such thing, says the Ramban. It's in every single day God is saying, I am bringing forth to you these miracles, and it's your responsibility in order to notice them. Shabbat Shalom.